All right, it's 10 after, and we'll reconvene the meeting at this time. And we'll go into our Budget and Financial Management Committee. Commissioner Rob Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walker, did you have something that you wanted to bring forward this morning?
Mr. Chairman, is in your packet is the backup that I didn't get it out until Friday, which is with my memo kind of outlining, updating on the Sea Turtle Conservation Center, the three funding sources that the county had allocated to them, outlined my memo regarding each of those particular funds and where we are. Also, you see the spreadsheet behind the memo with each of those districts, with the district, each of those sources, the District 4 grant, the TDC, split funding between the Turtle Center and the Marine Sanctuary, and then the original $60,000 TDC grant. And then behind that, just with that, most of that information was developed by Ms. Bell, who, as you know, is your OMB director. Mr. Burton, he's the finance director for the clerk controller, and he sent out the three budget modifications that we'd been traveling under and a timeline of the project. It's been a long process. We reviewed it. I know Commissioner Williamson's been frustrated with staff and with the center. It's been a convoluted, confusing process. I mean, I think we've gone through as best we can. You see the timeline. This is pretty much what was done and what we traveled under. And just remember that it's a two-part process. Is that our budget department, you know, we're managing the budget. The finance department, which operates under the clerk controller, is responsible to verify that and to make sure that before the check's cut, that everything's appropriate. They've agreed on the spreadsheet. You see Mr. Burton's timeline. It's what they were traveling under. We were traveling under. There's I believe it's $7,488 remaining out of the original 165 commitment, and we just need to decide whether to move forward with that. Ms. Bell, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, please. I think the whole problem started was when the $165,000 that was approved at that time, it was not followed with a budget amendment and the proper account established. And when that happened, we piecemealed it after there. That's what should have happened. The first budget amendment that we had was for $70,000, and it was for the Navarre Beach Science Center, because at that time, I thought the sea turtles and the Science Center were one and the same. But what I should have done in retrospect was just set up the account with $165,000 in it in District 4. And when that didn't happen, that's when the confusion came.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After last week, Thursday, we had there was an additional budget amendment that came forward, and it just gave me more questions. You were saying, Jane, that after the 165 was approved, I couldn't find where the board ever voted to approve the 165. Do we know? You know, that's where it all starts in my mind. I was
exactly
operating
right.
under the assumption,
You're
the same as
exactly
everybody else, that the 165,000 that everybody had been talking about was approved. And was that ever approved?
Not that I saw, I mean, I understood through exchange and letters that it was, but I didn't see in the minutes or nor on video, that it was.
Because
Did you see?
I've had
Did
the
you see?
opportunity to
I saw it.
watch some of these videos, and I've reviewed the budget, and I've looked at these budget amendments, and so I've done my research, and that's why some things just still didn't add up to me, and why I was asking some of these questions for clarification. And, you know, when the Turtle Center came forward and they initially made their proposal, they did have a letter that requested for $165,000.
Correct.
And this kind of all came about for me when I asked the president of the Turtle Center board when the 165 was approved, and she referred me to a meeting where the former District 4 commissioner stated that he was good for up to 165. So I could certainly understand why they would be operating under that impression. But even at that meeting, which was a Thursday meeting, Monday the request was on the agenda. We didn't have a full board here, and that board decided not to move it to Thursday. At Thursday, the Turtle Center came back during the public comment period and specifically said that they were not there requesting funds, that they were only there requesting the lease. And the lease was subsequently approved at that meeting contingent upon funding. So we knew at that meeting that the 165 may have been discussed. We knew that we had a letter requesting it. We knew that a commissioner said that he was good for it, and I know there's a great deal of latitude given to the recreation fund accounts, but we knew that it was not approved then. Is the only approval for funding for this project, was that at the July 2013 meeting, the $70,000 out of rec funds? I know we had a $60,000 TDC grant, but
Out
could
of
you
the
maybe
rec
speak
fund,
to the three?
out of the rec funds, there are 3 budget amendments. There was one in July of 13 for $70,000. There was one the following year for $36,804. And then there was another budget approved amount of $70,000. So collectively, over $165,000 has been approved.
So what was the intent? I know what the intent was of the $70,000 in 2013 because the budget amendment says, you know, funds for the development of the Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Center reserve for contingencies, which is that's just the account, that's how much you have left in the bank. So the District 4 Projects Fund as approved at the July 25th meeting. So the $70,000, the first one, we know what that's for, and we had a meeting approving it. And then we move forward to this is where I need some help here. We have the Monday meeting where on the agenda we had the request for the $36,804 because evidently we had been paying for construction expenses out of the TDC fund, and it should have been coming out of the previously approved rec fund. So I get that. So we approve that. It says to repay TDC for money spent on construction. The Turtle Center building promised from District 4 reserves. I'm curious, why would you use why would we use promise?
That's a word that I used, maybe it's just a...
It wasn't referring to so we didn't have any
No.
board action that we're referring back to, but I'm fine with that. And then on Thursday, the $70,000 budget modification was added. So the $70,000 was not on the Monday meeting, only the $36,804 was. Then we get to Thursday, and we've added this $70,000 budget modification to set up a Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Conservation Center expenditure account for the allocation of funds for the construction of the new Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Conservation Center. Can you tell me what was the intent of that budget modification for $70,000 that was added on Thursday?
so we could establish that account and pay for invoices that were coming through our finance department. Because on the original budget amendment for $70,000, that, I thought that account was already in District 4, but that was the Science Center. So that's why I used the $70,000 to establish that account. And there's no magic behind the $70,000. That was a conversation between me and Commissioner Melvin, so we could start paying these invoices.
Okay, I guess the question I'm trying to figure out is, this 70,000 that was added on for Thursday, did that take the amount that was allocated up to this $176,000 number? Or, you see
Yeah, I see
where
what
I'm
you're
coming from?
saying. I see
Because
what you're
if we're
saying.
operating under the assumption that 165 was what was going to be allocated, and now we're trying to cobble this together, and, you know, we're saying now that it was 176,
Yeah.
where are we on the balance? Because it looks to me like the 70, where do you think we are on the balance? Is it the $7,000 number that
I mean, I
Hunter's
think
referring?
where we are on the balance is all in the spreadsheet and all in the data that we've given you, because what we've budgeted is not what we've spent. And Commissioner Williamson, you are exactly right. But we are, yeah, it was just incorrectly done originally, which created the confusion.
Okay, well, my concern would be that as of last week, we were operating under the assumption that we had allocated tax dollars without board approval. And then the $70,000 budget amendment came forward, and, you know, we're able to use these as justification for the mistake that was made, that there never was a formal request and board approval granted for this 165. And it may have been understood, but it was never granted. And to me, that's one issue that definitely concerns me. But I'm definitely interested in working with you and working with finance to make sure that we can have some better internal oversight to where this won't happen again. And I'm hoping that the board members understand, and that the general public will understand, that any discussions that we've had here at the board level, any decisions that I've asked the board to make, or recommendations that I've made, have all been made based on information that I've been provided by staff. So the original budget amendment for more money than we had in the account, I was basing that decision on the information that I had received from staff, and that was not refuted in any way when I was up here. And to me, this isn't about the Turtle Center, this isn't about politics, this isn't about me or staff, this is about the general public, and it's about trust. The public has to trust that we're properly taking care of their tax dollars. And they have to know that if this, and we have to trust staff that the information we're getting is accurate. And in this case, it doesn't look like it was accurate. And the last thing I will put forward is, you know, where do we go from here? So I'm open for recommendations from the staff, but I think at minimum, you know, we saw what happened with the lack of oversight with the bathroom project in Navarre. We ended up with a bathroom project that never planned to hook up to the sewer system. That was a pretty big miss. And we've got this here where I still don't know, based on what finance has given me, where the total ends up ultimately being in the 165 that we're supposed to have. And we've got restore funding that's coming up where we're going to be managing in the form of a grant multiple projects. I feel we need to work on immediate improvements to our internal oversight.
I think that's we certainly do need to look at that. I would recommend that you, Ms. Bell, Mr. Burton, and I do that. We can go through and the internal auditor to make sure that we do tighten up some things. But I don't think there's a blanket statement that there is that concern. In fact, our people are meeting right now, as I mentioned earlier, with the Treasury consultants. We manage, millions of dollars in grant funds every year. And this is very similar to, you're exactly right, to the Restore in that it's different. In this case, we were managing a project without a project manager, and they had the project manager. We had too many people looking at it or in the pot. We had too many cooks, if you will. So I clearly think this is a one-off situation. I've told you all that. I think we've got to, if anything like this comes up again, which I hope to God you're talking to your next county administrator about, is that it's we have specific procedures in place as far as that goes. But I think we need to look at our internal controls. We'll do that. I want you to be a part of that. I want Michael to be a part of that, Mr. Burrows, Bell, and get that done. But we've got the finance director, the finance folks looking over us. We've got the independent auditor. I mean, we've got the auditor general. I mean, our books go to everybody. So I mean, we certainly want to get it right, and because we travel, the only thing we've got to travel on is credibility and trust, and I absolutely agree with that. And staff, the only stock in trade staff has is your trust. That if we don't have your trust or we lose that, ball game over. So we understand that, and we're going to make sure that's shored up.
So we know where we are, and we're all on the same page. The 60,000, remember after the meeting I requested to make sure that the budget reflected accurately where we are, and we have a reversal of that initial budget amendment that started us down this path. So that account is believed to be zeroed out. And so we have a journal entry that was made after the fact taking 1136 from a zeroed out account. So that's probably going to need some correction, but we have a general understanding that the $60,000 grant is zeroed out. Now, the 165, based on the information that I got from finance, we may have some discrepancy there on what is left, but the 74, I guess we're going with the 7488 for what's left of the 165 that was promised. And then we have the 43,915, which there was some discussion about whether or not a couple of items on there were a acceptable use of TDC funds under the statute. And where are we on that? Specifically, the veterinarian technician. I think I could make the argument about the volunteer coordinator. And said as much. There's roughly $3,700 or so that is still left to be applied to that, that's available, that was approved. I could certainly make the argument that the volunteer coordinator would be an acceptable use of funds. The veterinarian technician, to me, is a, what are your thoughts on that, Hunter and Roy? In your backup is I do spend a paragraph talking about that, is this $4,800 that was allocated for veterinary assistant, and I believe that's kind of supposed to train the volunteers as they're dealing with handling the turtles in the education center. And both the county attorney had reviewed that and specifically thought that would be a stretch as far as the TDC funds. So I've told that to Kathy. She said that she wanted to see if there were other examples, and I said, listen, if you can show us something that makes sense, but on the face of it now, it certainly is hard. It's hard to
to fund staff positions for promotions. I mean, remember, TDC funds, as you well know, is on our board member list for promotion and marketing, essentially. And so if you're not promotion or marketing, you're not exactly reflecting what the TDC is about.
Yeah, and
So that
so
we have a
we had a
hold
balance
on
of, I think, 9712 minus the 4,800, and then there's different totals that are remaining in those requests. I think that's certainly been approved and should be allowable, so it would be the 9712 minus the 4,800, so we have the total there.
Makes sense.
And I know that the Turtle Center folks, Ms. Holmes and Henry, are here today. I don't know if they would like to speak on this for any reason. If not, we can move forward. I'll take any comments from the board before we move on, if anybody has any comments. Okay. Well, name and address for the record, please.
Yvonne Harper, 7375 Olympia Street. So this is just for information purposes. Is the Turtle Center funding still being held? Or is that going to be released for future funding? Because I know a couple meetings ago it was voted on to withhold any future payments until this was resolved. So will future payments be made or released, the funds?
And I was just about to address that.
Okay, thank you.
In my mind, the balance of this 165, I'm not comfortable with allocating any additional funds to this entity. And I'm fine with holding open the possibility that District 4 rec funds could be allocated toward this group in the future, and would certainly like to meet with them and try to repair any damage that there has been to the relationship. I want to say up front that this, again, was not ever about the Turtle Center. And I felt that when the requests were made in December, that yes, it's possible that Santa Rosa County could do a better job of telling applicants and those that are looking to receive taxpayer funds and use a taxpayer asset like the building. Maybe we could have done a better job of letting them know, hey, you're going to be required possibly to give us financials on this and let us know where you are. Certainly, I should have recognized the fact that that had not been requested prior to me taking office. So perhaps being an all-volunteer group, that maybe they would have needed a little bit more time to put these things together. But in my mind, when you're requesting tax dollars and you're then awarded tax dollars for a specific purpose, when you request payment of an invoice, you bear some responsibility to subtract that off of your total and to maintain a balance of what you have remaining in the different funds that have been requested. Then when I would have asked for the balance, and all I was trying to find out is, where have we been, where are we today, and where are we going on this project? And had they been tracking that all along, they would have been able to provide that to the Office of Management and Budget and say, this is what we have as a balance. And now you put this up against what you've got, Ms. Bell. There really would have been no need for them to meet with you over a period of months trying to piece back together 6 months or a year and a half worth of invoices. The second thing is the timeline. Requesting a timeline so we could know how much left that you have in this project, how much left you have to spend, and when will it be completed. Felt that was a pretty reasonable request, and that request wasn't responded to. Those are the those are some of the areas that we can talk about for improvement. But I'm encouraged that their board president has said that this suspension of payments did not delay their construction in any way, that they're still moving forward. And I look forward to this project being completed, and I hope that it opens, because Santa Rosa County has limited funds, and we don't have the money to waste, and we don't have the money to set aside for a project in 1 year when we need those funds to be invested in that year. So I'm hopeful that this project gets completed here in short order, and that it gets approved to be opened. But I can't move forward, Mr. Chairman, supporting any additional funds from this group.
Name and address, please.
Henry Tyler, 8661 Bay River Road, Navarre. I really didn't want to speak, but I've got to respond to 90% of what you just said. Y'all approved giving us the money. It's like signing a contract with a guy to pave the street out here, and he paves the street, and you get through, and they say, well, we didn't say blah, 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 and then y'all start changing the ball game when we're 99.2% into this thing by making statements like we didn't give timelines. We've never required a timeline until you walked in and said, I need a timeline. At that time, we were trying to figure, I knew exactly how much money we had left. I was the guy that was, I told y'all in the last meeting, doing the commitments on this project. So when I purchased a well 3 months before we invoiced it because the well wasn't dug for 3 months later, on my commitment sheet, that $6,500 went away. We started, when I came on board in October, so I could get to my commitment. I built the job backwards to let you know I just built the job backwards. I took invoices we had and said, here's what we spent to date, here's what we got left to do. The scope of work out there is not clearly defined. It's almost like a time and material type job where we do it as directed. For instance, the curbs are 8 inches above the concrete slab. Well, how do you deal with that? It's not in my budget to pour a $3,000 concrete to correct a building that belongs to the county that they supposedly gave me money to fix. But I had to fix the slab, so we fixed the slab. Wasn't in my budget, wasn't in my timeline to do it. So it was a constant, not major scope changes, because we knew what we needed for turtles. We didn't know what we needed to fix the building that we were inherited. It was basically a leasehold improvement to y'all's property, to the taxpayers' property. Doing it with y'all's money is, I don't know any kind of way we could have done it. When the guy submitted an invoice to us, we approved it. We didn't write it down and say it goes to 52877-4. We approved it and said, here, pay it. Send them in. When the contractors would call us back and said they're not being paid, we'd come up here and talk to find out what they were. It's standard business operating. It's not something that was being done. We feel like we're getting kind of kicked under the table, kind of, because of something that we've done no wrong. I don't know what else to, I mean, every dollar that we've spent has been accounted for, and a lot more has been spent out of my hip pocket and some other people's hip pocket to improve this building that belongs to this county that I haven't been reimbursed for, and I'll never be reimbursed for it because I'll never ask to be reimbursed for it. And now we sit here and say, yeah, we're going to renege on our deal. We're not going to give you. Some president said they don't need it. We need it. We need it. We got stuff to do down there. I was down there all day yesterday doing stuff. We need what y'all committed to do. I think it's a shame that you sit here and say, well, we committed, but we're not going to do what we said we're going to do. You're talking about taking care of taxpayers. What kind of trust does that put in to this board? Yeah, we said we were, but now we're not. How about I said I was gonna pay my county taxes, but now I'm not? It's just wrong. And it's more of a principle of thing than you're gonna kill us. You know, I take $6,000 out of my hip pocket and finish what we got to do and then never come back here. I can do that.
Well-
Probably should do that.
Well, Henry, I appreciate your comments today, and, you know, it was a building that, you know, you say inherited, but it was a building that was requested by this group, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that the scope of the project probably wasn't clearly defined. I think we can all agree with that. The building was never intended for this purpose. So things like the curbing that you mentioned and other things that have needed to be modified to basically convert a ranger station into a turtle center, it kind of helps make my argument for me and why I was justified in asking for how much more do you have left to spend on this project, and when do you think that you would be done with this project? Because the initial fears and concerns that Chairman Salter made from this dais years ago, and Vice Chairman Lenchard, that I've listened to now, having had the opportunity to go through some of these meetings to where I would kind of have a greater understanding of this project that I inherited. You inherited a building, I inherited this project.
I would
You know,
swap
was
with you.
the, you know, if the group doesn't have enough funding to, you know, they need this 7,000 that's left to finish the project, then some of the concerns that were addressed early on about sustainability, you know, maybe those were warranted. And you're right, there was one commissioner that did write a letter, and there was one commissioner that said that that money was approved. And it may have been the understanding of some of the other gentlemen that were on the board at the time that was approved. But it was never voted on and approved. And I think it would be best if we would meet aside from this meeting to talk about a way forward. But knowing what I know now, from diving into this a little bit deeper, I'm just not comfortable allocating any more funds. My fellow board members may choose to go a different way. But in my mind, because of some of the things that you've brought forward, when does it end? You know, how much, you know, are we going to have to put toward this to get it finished?
It ends when we finish with the $165,000. That part ends. Then it continues on as it's been continuing on. We're doing a $50,000 addition inside that building that has nothing to do with county funds. We're doing donations that are increasing the value of that building down there every day that has nothing to do with this county funding.
And this may not be a question for you, this may be a question for Ms. Holmes, but a little off topic. Do we get grant funding? Have we been awarded grants that we were trying to get to where, I know that this is the sustainability piece, and that's probably another conversation, but just while we're here, just to mention it.
Just be perfectly honest with you, the only grants that I'm aware of that we've applied that affect the county is the restore funds, and we were told that statements were made in those meetings that we're not going to get any funds from restore, and we didn't. We got turned down, I believe, Friday.
There's never been grants applied for except for restore?
I said I know, the only ones I know of is that we applied for restore funds. I think we've applied for, Kathy could answer that. I know, I can tell you about the building. They come to me and want to know about how much it costs to build this and that and the other. I can understand your frustration a little bit in the fact that you're getting a lot of misinformation from a lot of different people. I sit and listen to you, and I can put faces with where you're getting your information from. A lot of it's just, like you said, it's newspaper fodder or something like that. I think the comment you made is just good for print, but not really reality. A lot of the stuff that I hear said from up there is just that, because I hear the same thing you hear. I just don't pursue it as hard as you pursue it because I'm trying to get curbs lowered and stuff like that.
Why don't we meet between now and Thursday, and
Well-
and then we'll be able to have something to bring back to the board between now and Thursday on the recommendation for the
Rob,
balance of the
you remember a
165.
couple of weeks ago, you sat here and said that on a Monday morning, we're gonna meet on Thursday. A bunch of us showed up for a Thursday meeting from the Turtle Center. None of the other entities, including representatives from this board, showed up, and I see the smirk on your face, and I know you want to comment. Nobody else showed up. We tried to meet. We didn't need to meet and discuss budgets in front of these other entities.
Okay.
The timelines that were sent to you, every one of them had at the bottom, if you got any questions, call me, and I had my phone number. Hadn't heard a word. I mean, I can't tell you whether I can meet with you. I know I'm like you, I'm not going on vacation, but I've got soccer commitments for the next several days. And it's getting out to be more of a principle thing than anything else. We just feel like we're being put under a spotlight. I doubt that any other entity that's received a dollar from TDC has provided a timeline to you, nor a schedule of values for work to complete, nor a whatever. And you talk about this turtle deal, the turtle veterinarian deal, total misunderstanding about what that's for. We didn't, that was argued back when it was done back in 2013. That process was argued, yes, no, yes, approved, yes, approved, nah, we don't know, we got an attorney that says that's a stretch. Well, we don't know where to go. We really don't. We're not politicians. I don't know what we are, but we're in a smell of a hiss. Appreciate you listening to me.
Mr. Andrews, let me ask you a question. And going through all the material that we've been provided, one of the timelines on action by the board was October 25th, 2012. So Commissioner Melvin stated the following: 60,000 from the TDC, and I'm good for up to $165,000. He later made the following motion: direct county attorney to prepare a lease between ourselves and Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Conservation Center and set it for 5 years and make it conditional for review based on fundraising and get this started. And he did so without objection. The motion was passed by Chairman Williamson. Is that not approving that $165,000?
I think the motion was, that could be interpreted to be an approval of the $165,000. There was not a formal budget amendment document that was approved immediately thereafter. That is the normal process that we go through. But I haven't watched the meetings, but if he made a motion to approve that, and Chairman Williamson passed a motion, then I think that was approval, but not formal budget amendment approval.
And let me just, while I'm on this track, I can see how the Turtle Group assumed that that $165,000 had been approved, so they're now moving forward with their project. And it's my understanding that there's like $7,000 left of the $165,000.
Correct.
So my position is, and I know each commissioner stands on their own and they do what they think's right, but I wish there was a way we could go ahead and find that $7,000 to finish out the draw on the $165,000, because that was the intent of this motion. Whether it was formal or not, it was voted on, and the intent was the $165,000. So my position is, I hope we can work out something where they can finish their project and be able to draw on that remaining $7,000.
That was not the intent, though, Mr. Chairman. I have viewed the meeting, and as I said, Ms. Holmes was there and specifically stated that she was not there for any money. The only reason that she was there was for the lease, because the lease was important, because could not apply for any grant funding until they had a building. Commissioner Melvin's motion was related to the lease only. That's what the motion was for, and it's reflected in the minutes. So, and now, having this conversation with the county attorney and county administrator, that's not what was put forward to me there, but I'd love to have Roy review the meeting and take a look and see if that's what you feel. I'd also have, I agree, you know, that's what the understanding, I would be under that interpretation that 165 is what you had to use for this project. The issue I have is that there has been money spent on close to $30,000 that's been spent, which would have given you more than enough to finish this project, and has been spent on things that were related to rehabilitation of turtles or uses that you know that you will likely never be able to do. You know, we have two, I think the first allocation that was ever made was that 25,571 for the two tanks that are outside. I think those tanks are going to be used for maybe if we ever get rehabilitation permit of turtles, or maybe Ms. Holmes can speak and let me know that no, those are actually going to be used for something else. But as I said, I don't believe that the motion was ever made to approve that 165, and I think it makes sense. If that 165 was approved, then why did you need to come back and do a $70,000 motion 9 months later? Why would that even be necessary?
Let's try to bring this to closure as quickly as we can, but still have good dialogue. Henry?
Yes, sir. I just quickly, December 29, 2012, Commissioner Melvin sent a letter, and I won't read it all to you, but down at the bottom he says, I have made a one-time commitment of $165,000 from my recreation fund to support this important project. He states these funds have been approved by the board and are now encumbered for that purpose. At that point, when that letter was written, we didn't have any money because he's got a further statement down here that says he'll release it. When we come up and say we've got a $10,000 worth of donations, he will release $10,000. And I think that's what these subsequent three motions that were made was released. I don't think this board ever approved or has to approve $165,000 he's got in the contingency fund. But later on, they came and they asked for some kind of what y'all call a budget amendment or something, where you actually approved more than was needed. But the first increment that was released was $70,000. That's after we presented proof that we had this thing. He was going to y'all were going to match the donations amounts that we got. And we had to literally come up here, meet with the staff, approve the donations, and then they came, I guess, to this board and said that, okay, they approved 70 grand, y'all released 70 grand, and y'all did what do y'all call it, a budget amendment?
Ms. Holmes came and asked for $70,000 at that meeting, and actually had raised about $26,000 at that point, is what the backup documentation showed. And with all the volunteer hours that y'all had, it was over $120,000 of value, I believe, that y'all had, well within the parameters of the agreement to have $10,000 increments. I don't have a problem with asking for the $70,000. That's what Ms. Holmes asked for. The issue is that there was never any subsequent funding asked for. Hey, we're now ready for the next payment. We've got this much money, or what have you. And that was an internal issue. I haven't at any point said that the Turtle Center, and I hate the fact that y'all are the ones that have been associated with this, because you're right, you haven't done anything wrong, okay? And I know that there is collateral damage here, and I wish these decisions were discussed and made in a vacuum, but most of the mistakes have been made have been internal mistakes, and we're going to get those corrected. I'll offer up again, if you can't be there, I understand, but I'll offer up again to have a meeting with the Turtle Center folks between now and Thursday to where we would have an opportunity to talk about this remaining funding, and based on that conversation, bring it forward for board action on Thursday.
The only thing I can say about that, if you could do it tomorrow, that'd be the only time, because I'm leaving town tomorrow and I won't be back for a
We
week.
could do it immediately after this meeting.
If you want to look at your schedule and go from there. Thanks.
What we're after is resolution. Yvonne, come on, quickly.
It might be because I'm blonde or worked all weekend in the hot sun. I'm a little confused. May I ask a couple of questions? So your understanding was that the 165,000 was approved based on what you just read? Is that correct? Okay. Your understanding, Mr. Williamson, is that it was not approved. Is that correct?
Based on watching the meeting,
Okay.
that request was discussed, and the motion that Chairman Salter is referring to, I don't believe the intent of that motion was to approve 165,000. I believe the intent of that motion was to enter into a 5-year lease with the Navarre Beach Turtle Conservation Center contingent upon funding.
And so is that why you can't move forward with the balance of the funds?
As I said, I'd like to have those conversations with the Turtle Center folks.
I just want a clarification because you stated this morning that you don't feel comfortable moving forward. So I was just trying to clarify the reason why. Is it because you believe it was
I'd
not
like to talk
properly?
to them about that.
Okay. And with regards to the other projects, you said you had asked for the same information. I'm going to kind of segue into something else for a second. You said you had asked for this same detailed information from the Science Center. Can that be provided to the public? Because I think it's great. I absolutely think it's great that there's such detailed accounting for the funds that have been spent. And you said you had received that information. Can that be made public as well?
I said from this dais that I had inherited 2 construction projects, the bathroom project and this project. And those 2 construction projects, I did, and I think you've done a public records request and know that I've talked with Mr. Gomillion about the bathroom project. And we found out from me looking at the accounting on that one that we had not planned to hook it up to the sewer, and that we had $10,000 or so odd expense with that. Once again, an oversight issue, and it was approved that $100,000 from District 4 rec funds would go toward the materials on that project. And here again, there were concerns voiced by many of the members of the board up here about that project. But we had accounting on that project, we knew how much was left, and we knew when it was going to be completed, had the answers there. The other project was this one, and we've beat that horse to death. Now, in addition to that, on December 24th, even though it wasn't a construction project, it was a large ask, $125,000 was the Marine Science Station. And I asked for the accounting on that project and have received the accounting on that project.
And so can that be made public as well?
And we know that they have, I don't know what the balance is that they have, but I mentioned from the dais here that the reason they haven't spent all of their money is there is some study going on to make sure, I guess, that the cameras that are being installed would not negatively impact the marine life, so they're waiting until that study is completed to then move forward with putting in these underwater cameras. And I viewed the meeting where Ms. Morrow came before the board and discussed that.
Well, that's all I'm asking, because I'm just asking that that information be made public as well, because this is really detailed, and so I imagine that theirs is just as detailed, since that's what you were looking for. So can that information be made public? Because that was one of the requests
Sure.
via email and public records.
Yeah,
So
just
that's all.
like the Navarre Turtle Center, they're both nonprofits, so the information can be requested from them. But just because there's other forms of communication besides just email. Now, there was an email request made on the 24th where I referenced the Turtle Center, not the Turtle Center, but the Marine Science Station. Ms. Holmes commented on the fact that she didn't feel comfortable talking about the Marine Science Station because that wasn't her area of responsibility, which I understand. So there's no email
I'm just
for that
trying
information?
to get the information because you said you had requested it and it had been received either via hard copy, email, I mean, it was received,
What
therefore.
specifically would you like to know? What the balance is? Because we can get that from Ms. Bell.
You said that you
We know what the balance
requested,
is.
you said in previous meetings that you requested the exact same information from the other projects and that it was received. So all I'm asking is if the science station gave as detailed information as they have, which is what you requested, and I think that's great, can that be made public? Because you indicated at meetings that it had been received. So it was either received via email or hard copy. I'm not sure how, but I did ask for that, and so
Right.
I think it would be good to release that information as well because it is public record. That's all.
I think we have two different things going down the track here. One is the construction projects were mentioned from this dais that I requested the same information from both of them. I also, at a later time, mentioned that I had requested information from other projects, and one of them was the Marine Science Station. Not that I had requested timelines, or there would be no timeline to request. It wasn't a construction project utilizing, you see what I'm saying? There were two totally different uses of the funds. One was
yes.
a construction project. I mentioned those from here and what I requested. I requested the exact same thing from both of them. Other projects that were in the pipeline that were not construction related, sure, I may have asked Ms. Bell or I may have asked them, hey, where do we stand on this? What was this 125 for? In other words, it wasn't as, the request would not have been the same. You're taking what was said in two different meetings and trying to link it up to one.
Well,
And
no, I mean, the
understand where you're-
information that the Turtle Center provided was not just construction, it was for the 3 pots of money and how it was spent, the expenditures of that. So based on that, it's logical to conclude that what you're requesting is not just construction, but an accounting of the approved funds. And again, I'll state emphatically, I think that's good. So if that information is available, then I'm just asking that it be made public, that's all.
I think what you've requested has been made available to you.
I haven't received it yet, but I was hoping that you could facilitate that because you said it was received by you. Thank you.
Kathy, do you wish to speak as the final speaker?
Kathy Holmes, 3525 Ginger Lane. First of all, I wanted to thank Hunter Walker and Jane Bell, Michael Burton, and Karen Wheeler for what you guys did, pulling this together to clarify what has been spent, the invoices, and how everything matches up. I appreciate that. I appreciate your integrity in that. Second, I spoke to Mr. Walker. I'm going to get him some additional information on our volunteer hours, cost of project minus what we have received as far as donations and decreased funds, pro bono work, you know, half-price safety railing around the pool, that kind of, so you'll have a better idea of what this would have cost above and beyond what we requested. Grants, yes, we are putting in for grants, and we continue to put in for grants with the Sea Turtle Conservancy, with the Impact 100, for Make a Difference Day, anything local we put in for, and then we go above and beyond that at a state and national level. So there are grants. And then last, I just want to say, I understand that you say that this is not really directed at the Sea Turtle Center, but emails that we've received have gone from professional to condescending to somewhat threatening emails. So there are people on our board that do feel in somehow, some way, this is a personal thing and a Sea Turtle thing. And that's all I have to say.
You know, this is the second time that you've come before the board and you've mentioned condescending emails. And now, this morning, you've added more inflammatory language to say, use the word threatening. I think at this point, the only email that I'm aware of that would even come close to crossing the threshold of condescending would be the one from October 24th, which I referenced and read when I first brought this matter before the board. And that was when I said, do you think we could get these answers before 2015? Let's go. Now, if there's a subsequent email after that, because since then, I haven't done press releases, I haven't done social media, Facebook posts on this, I haven't commented in the press. I have been very quiet, just trying to wait until staff would give me a version of events that they would settle on to where we could move forward and make improvements. I haven't talked about the emails that I've received or the communication that I've received from your board president. I didn't even know you had a board or that there was a president until the newspaper had comments about how taken aback they were by the fact that I'd requested that payments be suspended. And now we can see that probably payments shouldn't have been suspended because they were never authorized to start with. But I would love for you to read for the record what the threatening email is, because I don't recall sending an email to your group that would cross that threshold.
This is actually to our board president. It seemed like the focus of this, whatever this is that's going on, changed to, from me to her in reference to a meeting that was referenced in both on June the 8th and June the 11th to a meeting the following Wednesday. When you were referencing that meeting in those prior meetings, you were talking budget, and it was like it was somehow connected to the budget. It was not connected to the budget in any way. So that was something that I thought needed clarification.
And to be clear,
Just
to be clear, I did not communicate with Cinnamon, the board president, until there was communication that stopped coming from Ms. Holmes and started coming from the board president. So that's who was communicating with me. So that's why I started exchanging emails from her. I kind of got the feeling things had been handed off at that point.
Okay. So the first thing that we had after the meeting that was scheduled on the 24th, which again had nothing to do with budget, had to do with concerns we have about organizations working together or not working together, organizations possibly putting information out into the community that is not accurate, and then people not getting the other side of the story. That's what that meeting was about, nothing with budget. And what Mr. Tyler said about us showing up, we did show up. Nobody else showed up, and when we called to try to find out where everyone was, it seems like it had been canceled through another organization instead of the people that had requested it, which was the Sea Turtle Conservation Center. So that meeting was canceled and never rescheduled. After that, we had some emails that started with Cinnamon Holderman, who is our board president, and by the way, if you're a nonprofit, you have to have a board. So everybody has a board that's a nonprofit, and if they don't, then they should not be a nonprofit. So it starts out with Cinnamon responding to some requests from Commissioner Williamson, which she felt had covered everything he had requested. However, we found very quickly that when we would send information, something else would come up. So we would respond to that, and then something else would come up, and we would respond to that. His email after that starts out with, "This is just a simple miscommunication." That was in reference to the meeting where no one showed up except for the Sea Turtle and the Marine Sanctuary. It wasn't a miscommunication. It had already been canceled through another agency, and we had not been provided that information. That's an issue, as far as I'm concerned. But we're past that. It didn't happen. We've also, as a board, determined that in any meetings from here on out, we will not attend meetings unless they can be recorded. There will be no one-on-one or 5 or 6 people unless we have a way to record that and keep accurate information, because minutes are not accurate. So I apologize for any inconvenience this has caused you or your team, but I thought the meeting was canceled. You and the Turtle Center have been unresponsive to me since our phone call last week. So how would I know differently? First of all, when Commissioner Williamson asked to meet us prior to this Wednesday meeting, we were not unresponsive. You talked to Cinnamon Holderman, and she refused to meet prior to Monday's meeting, Wednesday's meeting, because there was nothing to meet about. Okay? This meeting you proposed was not sea turtle finances related anyway. That is true and accurate. However, on June 8th and 11th, it did appear when Commissioner Williamson was talking about that it was budget related. As I recall, you wanted this meeting because of negative feedback received during a recent Leadership Santa Rosa visit. This is very true. Again, it's going back to the information that people are saying things in the community but not gathering both sides of the story or three sides of the story. One side of the story is being presented, which is inaccurate, and Ms. Holderman was trying to do we were part of that, and she was trying to do a briefing for people, and they were coming up with this off-the-wall stuff. It's my understanding that you were going to meet with others first to get some differences worked out. That never happened because although we tried to make meetings, it didn't happen. It was not on our part, it was on the other agency's part that they didn't want to meet. And I don't have to read this whole thing, I can just jump down to some of the things that she felt were somewhat threatening. It's entirely up to you all, or I can forward this email to everybody if you haven't gotten it.
What you've read so far, could you tell me what portion of what I sent you feel was threatening? Because
No, it's a little further down. That's why I said if you want me to keep on reading.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Quickly.
All right, let me give some of this. I'm not sure why the go-to response from you is adversarial. It's as if you are ignoring the actual words I'm communicating on this matter and replacing them with something that is else to entirely justify your attacks. Weren't quite sure what the attack part was all about because there was no attack. She was sending you the information you required, and you were sending back things like, you went against my recommendations and presented at the June 22nd meeting, which I told you would go poorly for the Sea Turtle Center. That's the kind of stuff that is threatening. When you're in a position of power and your recommendations move into intimidation type factors, this is a big email. I think it would be better if you all just got this and I didn't have to read this.
Okay.
Because when she finished reading this, she sent a letter to our board of directors and forwarded this with her concerns on how he had responded. He also responded to Mike Sandler with the Marine Sanctuary, not the Marine Science Center, which is a totally different entity, and that is under the school district, which is different than Northwest Florida Edge, which is a nonprofit, not underneath the school district, that asked him why he was picking sides. He was quite upset that this meeting had been canceled without the people that had called the meeting being notified, and that's how he started out. Why are you picking sides? Like this is some sort of war. It's not a war.
Okay, Kathy, Commissioner Williamson, then we're going to wrap this up. Mr. Rod Williamson.
there's so much taken out of order there, I don't know where to start. But I certainly don't feel that anything that was said in that email goes to the level of threatening. The meeting that you're referring to, the meeting was scheduled and requested by Cinnamon. That meeting was scheduled and requested before any action was taken on this board, and it was not related to Turtle Center funding. That was related to the negative perception that Cinnamon had viewed when Leadership Santa Rosa visited there. So to try to link those together isn't accurate. It wasn't my meeting. I didn't call the meeting. Cinnamon knew from Tom Vatter before she wrote that email, as I understand it, which basically just lays out that you guys have been waiting there an hour and you didn't bother to show up. She didn't send that email to anybody else, just sent it to me. That could definitely be looked at as adversarial, especially considering I had been told by Tom that the meeting was canceled. I didn't call the meeting, so why would I feel the need to communicate with everybody else? It was as simple as the meeting was canceled, okay, great. And then I end up getting this email from Cinnamon. And then Tom Vatter, as you know, sent out an email to everyone saying, I forgot to let everyone know that the meeting was canceled, my bad. So knowing that it was a simple miscommunication, after that email goes out, Mr. Sandler decides to chime in, and y'all decide to come here this morning and portray this as if I no-showed a meeting when you know coming in here that Tom had canceled the meeting and said as much in an email, and that this meeting had nothing to do with what we're talking about here today. And, you know, I wish that I could rewind the clock. I really do. And because I know that you're just defending what you're very passionate about. And I can understand that and appreciate that. I had no intention of drilling as deep into the history of this and the financials and all of the decisions that were made related to this Turtle Center project when I originally made my request in December. But I can comfortably say that one of the main reasons that we are where we are is because of the fact that even now, today, your group refuses to take any personal responsibility for not having a clear accounting of what you had spent in the way of taxpayer dollars and not having a balance of what was remaining of taxpayers' dollars that you had requested, and not being able to provide a timeline and a expense of what would be remaining. Now, that was requested, and it was a very reasonable request. And we can talk about all of the distraction and emails and meetings that were missed later, but there is external controls that are yours and yours alone. The internal controls we're going to get fixed, but the external controls are yours. And the other things that we never would have been here had we received those answers. And that's the reality of why we are where we are. You know, I've tried to make a recommendation on several occasions today that we talk aside from this meeting. If that's not something that you're comfortable doing, I completely understand that. I'm fine with moving forward right now and saying that I don't feel comfortable allocating funds to your group because I have trust issues with your group. Now, I was prepared to say that in a private meeting, but questioning the emails and misrepresenting what has been said and trying to portray something that will play well in the newspaper, but isn't based in fact. You know, you can say that 2 + 2 = 6, but that doesn't make it true. My intentions, and I know my heart in bringing forward the questions that I have asked, and my intentions have been pure from the start. And I have always had the numbers and the truth on my side, and I let that come out. Your group has been the one that has evaded, that has not communicated, that has chosen to use adversarial language, and has refused to accept any personal responsibility at any point along the way for the things that were within your control. And at this point, I was willing to meet with you and try to find a way forward, but it looks as though you just want to continue to not have a conversation, but to try to have an argument. And I'm not wanting to argue with you. I would rather see, as I've said all along, the project get completed, get it open, and move on. That's my final comments on it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, Commissioner Williamson, what action do you want to do on Thursday? Turning this back over to you.
At this point, Mr. Chairman, there was just discussion of the Turtle Center. There was no action to be taken. Currently, funding related to this $165,000 number has been suspended, and I'm not prepared to make a budget amendment request for the balance that Mr. Walker has identified. If my fellow commissioners feel that that is something that they would want to do. I can completely understand where you're coming from on this, but I can't work with people that I don't trust. And I'm not going to allocate or vote to approve allocating funds toward that group. So I'm fine with moving on to the next item on the agenda unless any of my fellow board members have comments on this issue.
Move forward.
Vice Chairman Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to know the status of where they are as well and what this $7,500 is preventing them from doing. So I'll reach out. I'll make my own inquiries along those lines. I still believe in the project. I think it's a worthwhile project, and I would hate to do anything that presents a stumbling block for getting it up and running.
Thank you. And I've always been in favor of turtle conservation. I just haven't been in favor of the location. But we are where we are, and I'm just trying to get it finished.
So on Thursday, Commissioner Lynchard, would you like to see some action left open so we can make a decision on Thursday?
I would.
Okay. So,
I'll move that to Thursday without objection.
you got that, Commissioner Williamson?
What is the action that you're just going to work with them to see about a way forward? Basically the same thing I requested, but they're not willing to meet with me. See if they're willing to meet with you?
Yes.
Okay. I look forward to hearing what your recommendation would be for Thursday.